All right. Good morning, good evening, good night. Welcome to NFT Live. Sitting here with the homies. We got a lot to cover today. Bitcoin Ordinals, should you still get in? Is it too late? Are we still early? All of these questions will be answered. I'm sitting here with Biggie Poppins and Gifted. Mark is going to be joining us here in just a moment. Good to see all you guys early in the chat. We'll give you guys a shout out here in just one moment. But first, the man, the myth, the legend, Biggie Poppins. What's up, brother?
Not much, brother, dude. Got one word for you. Gathicocological. You heard that before?
Yes. No.
Dude, so it is basically something that has good and evil all at the same time. You can't have perfection without imperfection.
So my girlfriend.
Yeah, that's right. Significant others are all agathococological. But that's how I've been feeling about this space as of late. Jesus Christ. You know, the very highs, bullish, feeling super pumped about it. And then you hear crazy stories, just like the never-ending rugs that we always have. And you just bow your head down low and hope it passes faster and you can take in another breath. It's nuts.
There's been a lot of self-reflection here in the industry over the last, I would say, 2 to 3 months. Obviously, BAYC fell off a cliff. The rest of the collections have fallen off a cliff, which doesn't lead to the best of feelings every morning. But yeah, I love that take, Biggie. I appreciate you always schooling us with some new terms, some new ways of thinking. Gifted, what do you have to say, man? What do you got to follow up here?
I don't got any big words. I don't got any $10 words like Biggie. You know, we did have some recent updates coming out from Moonbirds and Kevin Rose that we didn't actually hit on yesterday. So, you know, that could be, I see Mark about to hop in here, but it would be good at some point today to talk about what's going on with Moonbirds and oddities and mythics.
And you know what? I'm gonna let this go until they realize. But yeah, we got Mark here in a second. I will get to this. I'll just come out and say it. The last time Biggie Poppins was on the show, I'd said I'd own a Moonbird, and I totally slipped my mind until you guys just started talking about it.
Knew it.
Damn it.
Knew it.
Who called that one?
We didn't bet anything, did we, Giff?
No, nothing was bet. Thank God. All right. So this man that we were about to bring in here was trying to preach the gospel of Bitcoin Ordinals to us in February. Before the Ordinal stuff popped off, he was on this network talking about how this is going to be some innovative tech, some new use cases for NFTs and things like this, talking about inscriptions. And now we have him back 4 months later to talk about everything that's happened, whether it's still too early or too late. Mark, are we too late?
That depends. Can you hear me clearly? Am I coming through all right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, that depends, you know, what you're here for, right? I think the days of 100x returns are probably past us now. So we've missed that boat, right? But hey, if you're here to make money, then, you know, 5 to 10x is still possible every other week, it seems.
So, you know, we're up here doing different things, right? We're trading, we're collecting, and both of those things serve different purposes. What do you do most with Ordinals these days? Are you more trying to make those quick flips, or are you collecting for the long term?
So this is going to sound like giga bearish, right? But at the moment, absolutely nothing. I'm just not like feeling anything right now. Like nothing's impressing me. Certainly at like the price points I'm seeing, right? So, you know, some of the hyped collections, they're now really expensive. Like, it's crazy to me that we're seeing collections for projects that are like 3 months old be trading for $10,000 to $30,000, while ETH is, you know, bleeding, and these are teams that have big treasuries and clear roadmaps and they've been around. Yet on Ordinals, apparently we just have this disconnect from the broader NFT ecosystem. So I'm not really collecting anything. And also the art on Ordinals right now isn't where I think it needs to be. There's still, let's be real, a lot of utter garbage coming through. And I think that's because the difficulty in putting high quality art on Ordinals is significant. Like, it's really, really hard. The Ordinals have recently merged this recursive update. So I'll give like a 30-second update on this. What it basically means is an Ordinal can reference another Ordinal. That unlocks dynamic building of generative art. So if you think about Bored Ape Yacht Club, the way that those NFTs are built, there's like the ape, and then the goggles get added, and then the hat gets added. So because of the restrictions on Ordinals and the size and Bitcoin block, what you can do now is you can inscribe the traits, and you can then build the NFT in like real time. So you actually own like the HTML that renders the NFT with the traits in real time. No one's really utilized that in something that is like, art that I look at and I'm like, this is really cool. There's like the odd collection here and there, but there's not really anything that's catching my attention right now on Ordinals.
I don't want to take up all the airtime here, so my co-host here.
Well, my initial take, and part of the reason why I haven't been super interested either, is that I agree that most of the art that I've seen has been trash. It hasn't been like people putting a lot of time and effort into crafting something inherently valuable, as much as people jumping on the bandwagon of like, hey, this is the new thing, come jump into this because we're the first to do this or something like that. Which that has a place. We all know that within the larger meta or crypto space that people care about being first and they care about those types of things. But so much of it seemed to be that hype of being the new version of an NFT, and then also looking at I think it was Magic Eden that was showing all the different things that make rare sats rare, and I looked at that and I was like, bro, this is garbage. Like, most of this is just like trying to get people to FOMO into the idea that some of these SAT numbers are more interesting than others, but how does that actually hold up? And then the tier, like you mentioned, the high prices are kind of scary and confusing for some of this
look at
stuff.
the price here on the OMB. So that's like, people are saying it's the blue chip on Ordinals. That's 0.3 Bitcoin, right? Not ETH, that's Bitcoin. Right, like you have to DGen see this and they're like, oh, 0.3 ETH, that's cool, and then they realize, it's like, oh shit, that's Bitcoin. Like that's really expensive. That's like really expensive. I mean, what's priced around the same on ETH now equivalent? The gods maybe thereabouts probably.
And see, even this to me feels very derivative, and like a lot of the things that have been thrown together quickly to try and capitalize.
See these attributes here under the NFTs, like these little badges.
There you go.
Like I'm giga bearish on this. So this is like determining what sats are like rare, right?
Yeah.
So my issue with this is like tracking sats isn't inherently possible with the Bitcoin protocol, right? So at the core Bitcoin, you cannot track individual Satoshis. So what ordinal theory proposes is this first in, first out model to be able to track Satoshis. So here, for example, on Magic Eden, you're sold a sat, right? That says this is from Hal Finley's first transaction. Now, per like actual Bitcoin code, that just isn't true. It's true for ordinal theory and their interpretation of how you can track sats, but there is nothing inside of Bitcoin code that says that Satoshi is from block 9.
Wow.
There are a few instances where you can assert that sats are from a given block. It's basically where the UTXO would be the same from a mined block. Now, whenever I propose like the bear case that this is just an outright lie, people use that use case to me. And I think there's like 800 instances of that exists, right? So it's like, you can't use the 0.00001% edge case of where that's factually true to justify everything else. So, you basically sold something there that per like Bitcoin code isn't particularly correct. And most people have no idea about that, right? They see this badge on Magic Eden, boom, smash buy.
Yeah, this is really interesting because it actually overlaps really nicely with the conversation that we're having on GM Web3 this morning about, does rarity even matter? And so, Mark, I'm guessing you probably have seen, some talk about Blur 2.0, that they've got these new farming mechanics where they're introducing trait bidding and things like that. They in a lot of ways kind of killed the idea, one of our many babies that we had in the space, this idea that the traits and the rarities were different and really mattered and should be valued different ways, and traders have been using those to speculate. And it seems like part of what our conversation came to is that a lot of that is completely artificial, right? And without the bigger context of like, okay, you've got a certain artist, you've got a certain track record, and then you've got all this demand and it's kind of this floor of demand. And then within that, you can start to like understand what constitutes some kind of rarity and whatever. But without that demand and that larger context, you're literally just making up mathematical, like you're just throwing numbers together that don't mean anything. And that kind of seems like what Magic Eden has done here to save their own business in a lot of ways, is create like sort of artificial rarities that don't really mean anything.
I think, I mean, my view on rarity and megapoints in general, like the NFT project that I've been a part of, like we hate rarity. I absolutely hate it. And I think as a trader particularly, like you've got in my, like, okay, so we take this back. There's probably one collection I think that has like well-defined premiums on rarity. And I think that's Azuki. Whether that's true after the last few weeks, I don't know. But Azuki has always been that like one collection where you would see this disparity between the floor and, you know, the spirits and other pieces in that collection trading significantly higher. In Bored Ape, you've got like Trippy Fur, but even then, I think there was a Trippy Fur sale for like 100 ETH or something.
Gold Fur is probably the most sought after for the most part.
Yeah, so, you know, maybe, and CryptoPunks are a good example of this as well, right? Which is that where some certain traits just ignore the floor completely, right? Like they just, they don't trade, remotely close to it. Hoodies is a great example. They're not necessarily rare. Like I think there's like a couple of hundred hoodies, right? They're not rare like an alien is, but they trade. I mean, if a hoodie was for sale for 100 ETH right now, it would probably sell instantly, right? So they trade at that premium. But if you're a trader, and I've said this to so many people, just play the floor. Because the upside there as well, people don't understand this. If a floor is pumping in a collection, like trading the floor is what you want to be trading. It's just as simple as that. Because if a floor doubles, the chance of the rare doubling as well is pretty slim. Like if Azuki 4x's from here on out, where's it at like 8 ETH, the chance of a spirit 4xing, because they're already trading at 60 ETH, is close to zero. So if you're trading and speculating, the floor is where you want to be playing. Now, if you're buying stuff forever, and I think this leans on what Blur's doing, then traits make sense, right? Like Hoodie. Hoodie is probably like many people's like forever grail punk. If they buy it, they care that it holds some intrinsic value, but they're like, I'm buying this and holding for years. Like, I don't care. And if you're playing with traits and rarities, then you almost need to be doing it because you're buying long-term like value accrual, or you're just saying this is my keeper piece. But if you're degening, you're flipping, you're trading, then just stay at the floor, because that's where the liquidity is as well, right? So liquidity is king, and just play at the floor.
I actually vibe with your statement about not liking rarity, in the sense of like within a collection, these are the traits that are less and less and maybe a little bit more rare. I probably vibe more so with like an aesthetically rare item. Like I bring up the Ringer's Goose because it just happened, so I've brought it up multiple times, different spaces. But like based on its traits, it's not rare. You know, like it is a 1 of 1, obviously, but it's not any different than any of the other collections, other than aesthetically, it looks like a fucking goose. You know, like that's where I look at even something like a Bored Ape, where you can have a ape that is not rare, but it looks great.
Pizza's rare, right? The pizza trait's rare on Bored Ape. And like I look at that trait and I don't really like it, but it's like one of the rarest. If you sort like Bored Apes by rarity, like pizza's way up there. But then you go to the bottom where, you know, you've got like the 4 traits super clean, and that's like what I like to vibe with. And they're like ranked 2,500, 10,000 and stuff like that. And I'm like, it just shows, because rarity is just an algorithm as well, right? And there's different interpretations of it. So, you know, we're essentially saying, oh, you've got to value this NFT based on what some algorithm has determined. So, and a lot of collectors, right? So collectors who just like are hunting for pieces. So we have a few people in our community who are like hardcore collectors. They just don't care for like the price. They just buy pieces they like. And often you'll see them collecting a whole bunch of pieces that aren't necessarily rare, but like thematically they're all very similar. And I think in some collections, Bored Ape's a good place as well, where like the Trippy hat, it's somewhat rare, but people collect around that because they're like, this hat's really cool. And then one of the best collections for this is probably like Utes, right? Which have like linear rarity, because no traits are rare in Utes. A lot of people don't know this, but if you go through the traits and look at the numbers, it's almost like equal distribution curves for every trait. So like combinations end up being rare, just by nature of the fact that it's generative. But the design from like Frank and the team there clearly was, these glasses aren't rare. They should never be rare, because there's equal distribution there. So, and that's why rarity is broken in a collection like that. I actually think on OpenSea, Utes don't even have rarity. They might not have rarity at all.
Interesting.
And I wonder if that's like a little agreement between like Frank and OpenSea, where it's like, it makes no sense for rarity in our collection. I'm pretty sure someone will have to fact check that, but I'm pretty sure they don't have it.
That might be also like a Polygon situation. I don't know, but that's an interesting question. Mike Erlinson making interesting points here about the only good time to trade traits really is before people realize the rarity. So like in the first 24 hours after a mint, that's a great point there. Also, Prodigy reminding us to remind you, like we always should, that this is not financial advice and information was found publicly on the internet. Opinions shared on this episode are solely of the Web3 team. All information is public domain. Please DYOR, do your own research like always, or don't. We don't care. Just don't look at us for financial advice.
All right, we're 15 minutes in to the episode. We're talking Bitcoin Ordinals, just everything going on within that ecosystem right now. Mark is schooling us here. Biggie, I'd love to get you in here to ask any questions you got related to this discussion.
Well, I mean, as far as rarities, real quick, I definitely agree that artificially imposed like scarcity is not always the best way to go. I'm much more bullish on community imposed scarcity, right? When a community decides a particular trait is more valuable or represents that collection better than something else, right? And so in those regards, I did not know that about you, Mark. That's really interesting, but I like that, right? When a particular piece, whether it's because of the algorithm and these traits that came together, or because like with punks, whether it's hoodies or 3D glasses, like it just becomes rare because the community values them higher, right? Versus when they are just imposed on you by the team through artificial scarcity. Having said that, like I'm like you right now with Ordinals, Mark. I'm following your lead. Obviously, I'm a Megapont holder and Apollo backer, and so that's where I usually get all my alpha or insights regarding the space. And I was looking at Munib's recent tweet. I think he did like a podcast with Vitalik and Udi. I retweeted it on mine if you want to find it, Q. But basically, he's talking about like the differences in the ecosystem and why Bitcoin has had such a hard time like establishing itself, right? Like as a leader or more than that, like just like the community in comparatively with Ethereum, right? And I really agree with his first point that unfortunately we still haven't been able to break through, which is like Ethereum is very open to developers, right? It's like, come do what you want, build what you want. Whereas with Bitcoin, you have a lot of pushback from like the core devs and the Bitcoin maxis, which I think like at this point, seeing the amount of eyeballs and attention and money flowing into the space just for the interest in Ethereum, it boggles me, man, to think that they're still pushing back, man, when it's obviously like they're literally like knocking down the door. What's your take on this? Like, do you think this is something that will eventually be able to get past? And to more to that question is like, is Taproot still the way, or is it the L2s, which obviously Munib is more partial towards, so am I, because I do think eventually we will hit a threshold on what we're able to do with Bitcoin. And just like what you were talking about right now, between being able to reference one stat to another to build a whole NFT, like that's unnecessary on stacks, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and if you're eventually going to want to build more interesting tech, especially if you're going into like generative art or interactive art, you're going to need an L2. And so like Munib says there, it's like all roads seem to point to L2. And my question, I guess, to you would be, is it an inevitability that we will eventually have to succumb to it, or the rest of the community will have to finally see the light, or are we just going to keep doing the ordinal dance?
I think like L2 is inevitable. To go on the whole, so I think one of the problems Bitcoin had during, let's say, 2021 and 2022, where, I mean, I know it had solid price action, but I think culturally it just lagged Ethereum, right? Like if you think back to like peak NFT euphoria, we were having all the fun and all of the Bitcoin folks were running around with laser eyes, just being miserable, it seemed, right? Like all of the culture and excitement was on Ethereum, all of the artists, all of the vibes, all of the creativity was all on Ethereum. And, you know, culture, memes, marketing, that ends up winning the war, right, of what chain people use. Right now, we're coming on, maybe we're still in a bear. It's hard to argue that when Bitcoin's up 80% this year, but we're in this like weird spot where there's not really anything driving forward like this mass cultural adoption like NFTs brought forward or DeFi just before NFTs. So we're in this weird phase of like where everyone actually probably really is building things right now. You know, essentially the next ERC 721 or the next ERC 20 standard is being built right now somewhere by someone that will lead like the next meta and the next shift and wave of adoption. And I think Bitcoin is seeing now that ultimately people are gonna experiment with whatever you give them. And right now we're saying, okay, we can stuff a whole bunch of data on Bitcoin, and it's really pissing off a lot of developers. And I think what they're gonna have to decide is, do we censor this and just say like this is just not allowed? At which point I think that's like super bearish for Bitcoin. And to be brutally honest, I think the miners and some of like the really big bag holders who aren't sitting on Twitter all day pissing about because they've got businesses to run just don't want that, right? They like the fees being increased. They like Bitcoin having some use case, right? Bitcoin fees this year have been unlike any other year, really. Miners are eating well. So I think ultimately they're going to have to decide to do whether they want to censor it. That's not going to happen. Or whether a whole bunch of Bitcoin developers and maxis need to soften their stance on L2s and potentially other coins, right? So part of the problem has just been how toxic most of the Bitcoin community is to anything that isn't Bitcoin. So like they'll openly say Ethereum, shitcoin, right? And they'll just be as brazen as that. They'll say like going to zero, garbage, centralized, like total shitcoin. And what we'll probably see is them soften, right? Because now they're going to be like, do we want all of this graffiti? They call it graffiti, all of this graffiti on Bitcoin, or do we want to say, okay, let's let them settle on Bitcoin, if that's for the roll up or some other L2, and have all of their fun on something like Stacks, right? Let's let them dick around, have all their fun on Stacks, and we'll keep our chain essentially as like the final settlement layer where everything is secured. So I think we'll see a softening of attitudes towards that, which will increase L2 adoption. And maybe that's what leads like the next wave of L2 adoption, right? Which is you've got a whole bunch of capital that's really interested in whatever the blue chip crypto asset is, which everyone knows it's Bitcoin. And they'll start to play around with these L2s that are settling on Bitcoin, I think. Especially if we get things like ETF funds and, you know, like real sort of, I call it real liquidity. It's not like crypto's small right now, but a lot of people are like, why is that an ETF like bullish? Because all of a sudden you're going to have like pension funds buying Bitcoin, right? Which is crazy because the volume, like pension fund volume is just unlike anything we see in this space, right? So when you start to get that institutional interest in Bitcoin, we still have some of that right now. Naturally, people will start to say, oh, how can I experiment with this? And I think Core won't like that. I could be wrong, and they could, I don't know, completely change how they're doing things, but I don't think that's going to happen. It's more likely that they'll say, okay, you guys go have all of your fun with DeFi and NFTs and creativity on an L2. And, you know, what we'll do is maybe not be as toxic about it. So I think that's probably what happens. How long that takes, I don't know. It's probably going to be a few years. Like these things don't happen overnight. We're so used to everything happening overnight in this space, but expect it to take some time.
Wow. So you think, but during that time, those few years, you think Ordinals will continue this graffiti posting, like, and post it? Like, what happens to them? Because I mean, it's not like with Ethereum, right? Like, which I'd love to get your thoughts on Ethereum Ordinals, which I'm still kind of like scratching my head on. But from what I understand,
ETHscriptions, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, ETHscriptions. Like, come the purge, all those things will be one of the first things to be flushed down the toilet, right?
I mean, ETHscriptions are. I have like serious bias on some topics, right? Where I just shake my head and I'm like, guys, just stay in it. Like, so the worst thing about this space, anyone who is into NFTs seems to have like an allergic reaction to holding onto ETH or Bitcoin. It's like they've got one ETH in their wallet and they're like, I have to spend this. Like, they can't just sit on the Ethereum. It drives me insane. Someone will say to me, what do I buy? I'm like, just sit on the Ethereum. Like, Ethereum, If you'd have just sat in your Ethereum in January, you'll be up 80%. Instead, you bought Mutant Hounds and you're down 80%, right? And just sit on it. If there's no compelling reason and you're not really excited about anything, just sit on the Ethereum or the Bitcoin or, I don't know, Solana if you're in that ecosystem, or Stacks even if you're in there. You don't have to be making plays every single day and jumping into anything. And I think ETHscriptions are a use case of that, where people are just like, oh, we just need to be doing something. I mean, it's just putting art on chain. That exists on Ethereum. Go buy a Moonbird, which is fully on chain, or a CryptoPunk if you have that kind of size, or Avastars. They were like one of the first folks to do it. There's a whole bunch of projects on ETH that are on chain, in chain, whatever you want to say. We don't need ETHscriptions, right? It's just utter nonsense. It's not necessarily gonna help anyone out. But if you're buying it and you've got bag bias, then good for you. And here's the thing: just because someone doesn't like it doesn't mean there's not opportunity to make money there, right? Like, you could still make a whole bunch of money trading something, even if a whole bunch of talking heads say that this makes no sense, because ultimately no one knows what the price is going to do, because we're just small participants in a massive ecosystem, right? Goes up or down, who knows?
So the narrative in 2017 was, let's raise a bunch of ICO funds to build the next Ethereum killer, right? And you saw Solana come out of that. You saw a bunch of different ICOs. I think Polygon was definitely one that did a specific ICO. Yeah. EOS, very, very much known. Okay, so we're sitting here in 2023. No one really at that time was thinking, well, wait, the Ethereum killer might be Bitcoin. And that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around, is like, my thoughts initially were, okay, so these inscriptions are just graffiti. You can't really do anything with them. But then what I've been told is, oh, you can actually use these layer 2s and develop things on or within the Bitcoin ecosystem that you essentially can do on Ethereum. Is that a correct thinking?
Well, so what's the use case for not using Ethereum?
What the same use case when someone says, I want to be on Solana instead of Ethereum, or I want to be on
isn't it the ultimate security of the granddaddy most decentralized blockchain?
Everyone has their own reason to use any protocol.
It's funny. So I'll see people trading that. So these BRC20 tokens, right, on Bitcoin, and they'll be like, Ethereum ERC20 tokens, absolute shit coins, going to zero, don't buy these, like centralized, blah, blah, blah. In order to parse and understand what's going on with BRC20s, you need centralized indexes, for God's sake. So you need compute resource that essentially is saying, okay, this is going there, this person has this balance. You're essentially recreating like the legacy finance infrastructure right now on Ordinals to do even the most basic of things.
Okay.
So a good example, if you're buying BRC20, right? If you come to me and say, hey, Mark, I've got 100 of this BRC20, give me $50. There's no way without me using a centralized indexer or calling a third-party API to verify that what you're saying is true. I have no idea, right? You could have zero, right? And I would have no idea. I have to go to a third party and trust them to be telling me the truth that you've got what you've said to me, right? That's just not true on Ethereum. I can see on chain what token someone has or what NFT someone has. So to say that Ethereum is centralized and you know it's not the holy grail, but be peddling things like BRC20 and other centralized ordinal index related services is just nonsense. It's farcical, right? Until there's like some L2 on like Stacks that has native integration with, you know, something like Ordinals, to say that Ordinals are going to kill Ethereum is just like, it's just pure bag bias talking right now. That's basically what it is. Yeah. Who has a vested interest in this? And you know, it might be as basic as, oh, I own 20 Bitcoin, right? And I want Bitcoin to go up in price more than Ethereum.
Let me simplify the question a little bit. It's basically utilizing the technology at the layer 2 level. Can you do things in that ecosystem, in the Bitcoin ecosystem, that point back to the Bitcoin protocol, which is the most secure, which again will be here for, you know, in perpetuity or what have you? Can you do things that you do on Ethereum now with the DeFi applications, different smart contracts on these layer 2s that point back to Bitcoin? Because if you say yes, then there is a good, you know, argument that could be said. Why not onboard people to the Bitcoin layer 2s instead of even Ethereum?
Mm-hmm. Well, Stacks is closest, right? So Stacks is easily the closest to this, and they're the most advanced in having like this natural peg of getting Bitcoin in and off like an L2 with SBTC and reading Bitcoin state, and you know they're working on being able to write to Bitcoin state. But even then, there are downsides. So what are the downsides? One, there's a new token. You need some incentive for people to be able to secure that network in itself, right? So there's a token there that's used within the ecosystem, and you pay it to use smart contracts and to interact with that blockchain. It has its own shortcomings. Like a Stacks block is tied to a Bitcoin block, right? So now you're still waiting 15 minutes to do something. And that happens on Bitcoin as well. I mean, people get antsy when they go to OpenSea, buy an NFT, and it's loading for 15 seconds. Like people are like nervous and they're like, oh, is it broken? I remember like back in the day when we were on Stacks or Bitcoin essentially block tied on Megapod, we'd have 45 minutes between like someone pressing mint and getting their asset. Like 45 minutes. The amount of like support tickets that we got from someone from Ethereum was just like, oh, my money's gone and my asset's not here. And we're like, hey, dude, you got to wait 45 minutes. And they were like, what the fuck is this chain? Like, how do people do anything here? So there's nothing is perfect, right? And it's the same, like, I dunk on Solana a lot because it's easy to dunk on Solana. But like when you use Solana, or when you use Polygon's a good example of this as well, you feel like you're in the 21st century. Right? You just do. Like if you go to like play around with Solana, DeFi and anything on there, it's just so fast and invisible. You almost don't care for a blockchain anymore. You're like, oh, I kind of will eat some of this centralization and some of the nonsense that people hate on it because of how usable this chain is. So there are pros and cons to all of this. And I don't think it's zero sum. I think the industry will be so big that there will be multiple winners. I mean, like for example, CBDCs, like the government issued stablecoins that are inevitable, they're probably going to be on Ethereum, or if they're not on Ethereum, they'll be on some proprietary like EVM chain that consensus builds for governments or something. So there'll be multiple chains for multiple use cases. We often say that we're like blockchain maxis, not like not Bitcoin maxis or Ethereum maxis. It's just like the blockchain technology and crypto as a whole. And whether Bitcoin wins or Ethereum wins or Solana or Cardano or Ripple or whoever it is, it doesn't really bother me all that much because I'm happy to jump around from chain to chain and meta to meta to just follow the trend of blockchain technology adoption.
Jacob, I hope you have your clippers on and like are clipping all these sound bites. This is awesome, Mark.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah,
I like the blockchain maxi term. I would adopt that one too because I've been calling myself an NFT maxi just because again I believe in the technology, right?
And
it's
the culture,
like,
right? It's like the culture of NFTs is what you believe in. That you don't care where they are. Like Frank was vibing on Solana. It's not exactly. They're a good use case, right? They moved from Solana to Ethereum, and their entire community moved, and nothing really changed. So it just proves it's like it doesn't matter where you are or where you call home, right? Like the project and the NFTs in themselves are far more than the chains, right? I think everyone thought we were like prisoners to the chains. A good example of this is I like to compare it to like watches, right? When there are a lot of people who buy like a fancy watch, and I always say to them, I'm like, well, you shouldn't buy that because it looks like the watch is wearing you. When what you want to do is you want to wear the watch. And I think NFT projects had this mistaken identity, and it was like we all thought that the blockchain was wearing the projects when it was totally the other way around. Like the Stacks is a great example for this. There's been no project launch, there's been no drops in a long time, and activity is minimal. And someone said to me, it's like, why is there no activity on the chain? Well, no one's launched anything. There's no culture there anymore. Like no one's doing anything exciting. And that's why Ordinals have a bit of hype right now because people are launching new stuff and getting excited. So it's as simple as that, really.
Why?
So we like the frogs, by the way. Like I like the frogs, I should say. Like
they have a great community. They have a great community.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
That's the only project that has stood out to me as like maybe being somewhat interesting and like original. Like again, so many of them feel like copy pastas or just straight up.
Do you know the history of frogs? So it's quite interesting.
No, I mean I'm familiar with the history of Pepe and Matt Fury. I don't know if it has any relation.
Yeah,
to that.
so Bitcoin frogs launched earlier this year, right? They were a free mint, so you just had to claim the frog for free, right? So they were a free mint, and there was actually a mistake when they minted, right? So basically, what happened is they minted only naked frogs, right? So there were 6,500 frogs that were minted, and they forgot to put clothes on them, right? So it was a bit of a joke. It was like, oh, there's naked frogs. And then their dev, he airdropped the fixed frogs to everyone, right? So it was a free mint, and then he paid Bitcoin to fix his broken free mint, right? And no one's given him $1, right? So you got to remember, so no one's given the founder of this project $1 at this point, and they just fixed it off their own back. And at the time when they were minting, they were the first, and I think they're still the only project that were like hardcore. You have to pay with Lightning. So their community is very unique in that it truly is probably the, if you're looking at all of the communities, including like Megapon, right? And I have huge bias because I have a project on Ordinals. But if you want to get into like an OG Bitcoin community and you want to buy an NFT, the Frogs are probably the best because they had, Lightning only mint. They were onboarding people to Bitcoin and Lightning on day one. And it was a free mint, so to the culture of Bitcoin, right? So their community will always be quite strong. I think I don't want to say they're like the crypto punk, because I wouldn't go that far to say anyone's ever going to be like crypto punk, but they'll always be like the OG, like Bitcoinish sort of vibing community.
So you have the native assets, right? Like, or native communities like the Frogs that you just mentioned. You also see this phenomenon of projects moving at least a part of their collection onto Bitcoin. What have you seen success there? Within
gods,
like
right?
the gods. There were a couple of 12-fold did it. Yuga
Oni
had that.
Oni's doing it. This is the question of like treating it in some kind of value hierarchy is like maybe the top tier. Like, do you like that use case of Bitcoin Ordinals as sort of like maybe more the high-end museum piece and limited edition, instead of trying to like just copy paste large collections and treat it like Ethereum, like treat it as maybe its own separate value system in a hierarchy?
I think you've got to be very careful as a project here because it could get quite messy, right? Like the gods are in this situation to some extent. It's like they've now got, I mean, how many other, is it 535? They've now got these 535 assets on Bitcoin that they kind of need to align utility with, or maybe they've just said they're not going to, with like what they do with their other gods as well. So there's additional utility burden or support burden for projects, and like if you go back to ETH, like the gods are, and they're going to update the art, like how do they update the art on these ordinals? Are people going to be mad? Is the price going to tank? So if you do it, you've got to come up with some clear communication as to what, like the reasons why. So why are you doing it? Okay, we want our community to have exposure to ordinals. Perfect. Is there any utility? And just be forthcoming. Yes or no, right? Like simple as that. If project X on Ethereum gets utility, does project Y on ordinals? And you just need to be clear, because otherwise people are going to assume that that's true. But I think it is a nice way to get exposure to ordinals, especially if you already have a community. And try not to charge so much money for these bloody things as well. As like we're really big on this at the moment with everything we're doing, right? Which like just let's get back to affordable mints, like 0.15 Bitcoin mints and stuff, just absolutely crazy. Like why is a mint costing? Yeah, like, it's bonkers. I mean, I can't remember what it's similar to Azuki, right? 2 ETH mints, like let's not do that.
I was gonna say we've been seeing that shit on fucking Ethereum lately too, with Ether and Azuki doing crazy expensive mints. And yeah, like that hasn't aged well already. I mean, Elementals is down almost 50% from a week ago when it minted.
You remove the upside for the community, right? That's what you do when you've got an expensive mint. Like Dutch auction is great for price discovery for the project, but not for the community, right? Because the upside is taken out by the project, which is maybe like, it depends on the project. I think for art, it's perfect. Like for pure art pieces, Dutch auction is great because what you're saying is you're fairly rewarding the creator there for their art, and it's finding price discovery for their piece. Yeah. Whereas for like a 10K PFP or 20K, what you're saying is like we're a community project, but then you're taking all of that potential upside from the community. So it can only go down. Really?
Yeah. I don't know how closely you watched the whole Azuki thing, but we couldn't,
because it was hilarious.
Yeah, we couldn't get over the way that they kept trying to wrap it in like the close of like, this was to expand our community for the community. Yeah, we're trying to bring in more people.
$6,000 mint or whatever it was. Yeah.
It was a $6,000 mint that didn't even get to public mint. Even the beans that was the most accessible way in didn't even get any of them. It was all the original Azuki people paying a shitload more money. It was ridiculous that they tried to make it seem like it was
they said it was adoption, didn't they? I mean, that's part of the problem with this space, right? Someone said to me the other day, why are there no new wallets joining? Like everything is still too expensive. Like, it's far too expensive still. Like for real, people are struggling to pay their rent, their mortgage, their bills, their cars. Like that's really going on like in the world. And you think we're going to get adoption by selling $4,000 like JPEGs that have no value? And I think we're going to see this fundamental shift in NFTs from projects that were community, utility. I think it's fair to say that a lot of like Ponzi utility, if the only utility was more JPEGs that people could sell for more value, it's Ponzi utility. And I think we'll now see the paradigm shift to, okay, that shit's dead. Like, we don't want this anymore. Like, where's the real value coming from? And there'll be the projects that lead the charge, which is, okay, if I buy this NFT, I want value. I don't necessarily want the price to go up because I don't want to sell this bloody thing, but I want some value back to me. Gutter Cat Gang is a good example. I know it's like a toxic thing to say, that project, but like a sneaker mint, I buy that NFT, I get an actual set of sneakers to my house, right? Like, I get a pair of sneakers. Like, that's real value. You say what you want about it, but that's probably more value than 90% of other projects, right? And it's a clear value proposition. It's not saying, oh, we're selling you a JPEG that might turn into a hoodie or something. It's clear, hey, you're basically buying a digital version of a sneaker. And we'll see more of that and advancements on that play, which is, maybe Frank is doing this. It sounds like the gods are doing this, which is, how can we drive value back to our holders when they don't need to sell their asset? Like, we don't care if the asset goes to 50 ETH or 100 ETH. Our North Star is focusing on value being delivered by holding the asset, right? So like, what does holding this asset get me access to? And you know, this isn't a new concept. Like, Black Amex and concierge services have existed forever. How we don't see more of that in NFT is just a bit puzzling to me.
I'm interested in your take on Blur Season 2 here. They're launching this new feature, trait bidding. They've been probably the hottest point of discussion for the past 6 months. And to go along with your statement there, to me, a lot of people are pointing at Blur saying, hey, you know, Blur killed NFTs. It's like, no, shitty projects killed NFTs. Like, if you don't deliver any fucking value besides dropping another NFT, and you think that like your floor price is going to hold, like, especially when the market's going the other way. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, you're just right. Like, why would you hold, even to some extent, this sounds really controversial, why would you hold a Bored Ape right now instead of the Ethereum, right? Until they come out and say, and they probably will. I mean, everyone knows that like Clubhouse is inevitable and there's stuff going on behind the scenes. But like, that's a generalization. There are many projects like that are really expensive, and you have no idea if you're going to get value from it whatsoever. Like, for the same price, you can go buy Apple stock or Nvidia stock, or like stock in a real company that you know is going to try to deliver value to the world and thus the shareholders. And I think now the space is just saying, okay, we want real value, and Blur has nothing to do with that, right? If Nvidia was tokenized and was available by owning an NFT, then the project wouldn't be down because Blur enables you to bid on it. Like, it is down because there's no reason to buy any of this shit at times. Like, when everything was crashing 50%, there's just no reason why I should be buying it.
But how do you factor the incentive structures and like cutting out royalties, which essentially acted like a tax on trading and different behaviors? Like, they've clearly incentivized certain behaviors and feedback loops. How do you factor that in?
I mean, royalties can't be enforced by the blockchain, right? People are trying to do things with smart contracts. We'll just have wrappers that wrap them up and avoid it anyway. If people can save 2.5%, that they will. So that, and we've always said this at Megapont as well, which is we just assume we're going to earn zero from royalties. If we earn something, fantastic, but you've got to assume it's zero. Obviously, that hasn't been true for a lot of projects where they've raised millions. But like, you know, the thing about Blur, they get so much hate, and I mean, I've dunked on them at times because of some of their core product offering. But the incentive structure of earning this token, it's like, what am I using the token for? Like, why do I want this token? Like, it's great that you're giving me it, but like, why should I be? Yeah, why? Who's buying it? I know who's selling it, the farmers, but who the fuck is buying this token? I don't see the buyers in volume. I don't see why I would want it. And are you now saying that I need to buy it to use the platform? Well, then the marketplace will die because it's a race to the bottom and someone use OpenSea. So I don't understand what this token is for, or how there's going to be buy-side demand. So I do think there'll be a lot of people bag holding a bunch of this. Look, this has happened before with Lux, right? Like, we've been here before, where there was a marketplace token that was trading and everyone was happy. I mean, I bought stupidly $50,000 of Lux and was staking it, and I was like, oh, look at this, like, free Ponzi token coming back to me. And then it blew up, and I looked one day and I was like, oh, my token's now worth 4,000, but hey, at least I earned 3,000 in yield, right? Like, great. I'm down 42,000. So I think it's the same with Blur. We've been here before. Marketplace tokens have this weird sort of stakeholder incentive misalignment where it's like there's a whole bunch of people who want the token, but there's really no reason to buy the token. And if you incentivize buying it, you de-incentivize users using the platform. So I don't understand how this ends well for anyone, really. Again, it'll play out over time, but I think it just all blows up in a lot of people's faces.
It's interesting that you bring that up too, because exchange tokens have done extremely well on the fungible token side, right? Binance Coin, BNB did extremely well by implementing the buyback, essentially. Like you could get a fee reduced on the platform, plus they did regular buybacks using the fees that they garnered because they were making hundreds of millions of dollars. They're going to put some of it back to accrue the token. So it feels like it worked on the fungible side, but I don't see the path, like you're saying, of it working maybe on the NFT side.
That comes down to innovation, right? Like realistically, why am I using an NFT marketplace? Okay, I'm buying an NFT, right? And ultimately, someone will just create one that's free, right? So like, there's no token involved. It's all free. These things aren't hard. I mean, that's why there's so many of them. If every NFT marketplace bumped their fee up to 10% and X2, Y2 were the only one that was free, I can guarantee you overnight that would become the market leader, right? And no one uses it right now. Other people do. Not to hate on their product, but it's probably the smallest in terms of market share. And if everyone started charging 10% and they were free, they would just use the one that's free. It's as simple as that. Whereas on the exchange side, there's like real liquidity innovation, whether you're using like perps with Binance or like there's like real KYC needed to on-ramp and to off-ramp, and they can charge different fees. And to be honest, like FTX blew up. Who knows if BNB is like a legitimate token? Like no one really knows what's going on with these. So I think there's a bit of shady stuff going on there and controlling floors and how those trade. And which is why Coinbase don't have one, I think, right? It's just like they don't see a reason for this. It makes no sense to them. Like pay them their fee when you buy and sell. But yeah, Blur, I don't see how this ends well. People are screaming out for an OpenSea token. I think they've been very smart to not airdrop one because again, if OpenSea and Blur had a token, the winner out of those two would be whoever's token, is needed less, not needed more. I think because people just wouldn't want to buy, I don't want to buy a token to use Marketplace. It's as simple as that. I'll just use whatever one means I don't need this token, unless there's some real innovation. So Blur could come out with a product that is significantly better than anyone else, but there's nothing to say that exists in the market right now, right? Like the difference between using OpenSea Pro or old Gem as we know it and Blur is minimal. I just use that because it aggregates. So unless there's a real use case for the token, I don't see this ending well. Maybe they have that up their sleeve and they just haven't showed the market. That's also a possibility, right? They're sitting on an ace and they're saying, oh, guys, look at this. And then everyone is saying, okay, I need this token.
Man.
Yeah, I guess in my head, I had imagined that, they do have obviously some top-notch devs and big brains, driving Blur. They keep innovating, and they're the only ones that have really been able to compete with OpenSea. And so I've been pretty bullish on where that token would go, because in my head, it was going to continue to expand, a whole ecosystem like they've been doing. Like they're the first ones to integrate lending protocols and DeFi into an NFT marketplace. Like nobody had done that previously. And so I guess that's what I had imagined was that they would continue to build out different applications, and that token would be at the center of all of that. And where and how that would matter, I don't know yet. But maybe you're right. Maybe to your point, like if the only thing for them is to basically try and use it as like a gate, to like gatekeep their marketplace, like that's not going to work.
Even on the lending, right? If I want to loan on my asset, I'm going to go where I can get the lowest rate. I don't care if it's on Blur or if it's on BendDAO or Paraspace. And that's the problem that I think these marketplaces have, and a lot of those products, it's just a race to the bottom, right? And it happens
like
in traditional finance. Exactly, yeah. In traditional finance, it's a race to the bottom. Like, why did Robinhood win? They won because it was 0%, right? Brokers were everywhere, right? People used brokers and they were like 3%. It was $9 to like buy and sell a single share. Robinhood came along and were like, actually, this is going to be free now, and we'll figure out how to make money by front running and selling data or whatever they do. But they made it free for everyone, and now everyone uses Robinhood to buy and sell options and shares. not because their product is better, because they never use another product, or they just use it because it's free. And no matter what Blur and OpenSea do, they're always going to be battling against, someone else who's saying, okay, these incumbents charge X, we're going to be free.
Blur token utility idea, and this goes along the same lines of Binance. It's not an innovative thought, but have the Blur token, have an NFT launchpad that is launching NFT projects within the confines of like not a bear market, obviously, but only Blur token holders can get access to that NFT mint.
Yeah, if that's the best platform, then absolutely bullish, right? So like real value, I'm a creator, I want to launch my project. Blur has the best platform for that. I'm going to use them. I'll buy the token, right? So, and that's just a case of like providing real value for a token, right? If your utility token has an actual use case, I think the market has demonstrated that people will buy it, right? And like I said, Blur might have an ace. Maybe OpenSea are working on something as well. That ace. If a marketplace has a token and they have a product that is superior to anyone else and everyone wants to use, then maybe that's the perfect Ponzi, right? But ultimately, no one has yet built something that is like, hey, fuck, I just need to use this platform. Even launch pads, how many launch pads do we see right now? They're just everywhere. Yeah. I think like there's Manifold, Foundation, there's Blur, there's OpenSea.
Nifty Kit.
They're everywhere. So
Magic Eden.
It would have to be spectacular. But they might have that product to what you're saying, right? Who knows? They could just be sitting on something like, oh, these guys are all clueless. Wait till we drop this token and this product, right? Market will explode.
They might even come out with some of those updates in the next couple of weeks. They already teased that there's more things they haven't even shared about Blur 2.0. But I wanted to ask more about stacks and get back on the Ordinal stuff. But go ahead, Q.
No, I got a couple different questions here. You can make them lightning questions. Nick Sorv is saying monkey JPEG to $1 million or zero. Which one? Which?
It's got to be one or the other.
Crystal ball.
I'm trending more to zero than $1 million in this market.
Wow. Okay. Along with Blur, and we can wrap up that combo. Biggie, if you have any takes as well, we'll tie a bow on it. Machi's role in NFTs. Obviously, Machi being like one of the biggest Blur farmers. I don't want to have like the good. I don't want to have like the good or bad like question. But just like your thoughts on Machi and that situation.
So Machi, the liquidity provider, and Machi, the person, I have two different opinions on. I think it's the easiest way to say it. His doxing of Zach, I don't think was great. Zach's exposed some really nefarious people in the space. Not saying that like Machi's on their level, but like Zach's exposed some real like scammers who are quite powerful, like who you wouldn't want to be enemies of. And I think, putting his details out there just wasn't the smartest play. They should have dealt with that privately. I don't care what anyone else says. Like, that was just such silly beef that the space had moved on from. Like, guys, just deal with this privately. How stupid and naive do you all need to be making this public? So I don't think that's good for the space. It just shows that we're petulant children at times. As the liquidity provider, we need this, right? Like, liquidity is king. And people say, oh, he's making a fortune, and as if that's bad. Like, he's providing a service to the space. We don't want to make this an impossible place for anyone to make money by providing liquidity. Let's be very, very clear on that. We need that part of TradeFi to come over. It's like there's that top Blur farm with 15 million of liquidity provided to various NFT projects. People are saying, oh, it's great that he's left. It's bloody not when you want to sell something, right? And you want to get out to pay your rent. And the guy's now gone off because he doesn't like the V2 like Blur points farming post. So yeah, we do need liquidity providers. I would prefer them not to be also like influencers in the space. I think that's where it gets a little bit dangerous.
Love that take. Biggie, any last thoughts here?
Yeah, well, I wanted to get back to this talk about utility, right? Not so much on the token side, but towards the NFT, which is the pool that we're playing in at the moment. But it seems like, and I mean, not seems, it's a fact that nobody has really cracked that business model, right? That code, like we said, everybody went for the royalties, and lo and behold, we figured out that wasn't it. And when people bring up utility, aside from like getting some kind of perk, whether it be sneakers or whatever swag it is, when you really put people's feet to the fire, they always scream community, right? It's like, oh, well, you get community as utility. And I'm not in complete disagreement towards that, but there's not so many communities out there, in my opinion, that can really tout that as utility, right? Very few of them can really claim, say, I'm part of this community and I have derived these benefits via networking. It's not like just because you're part of the community, maybe you get offered some whitelist or some stuff like that, but real utility where it's like I got some business out of it, or I was able to develop the product and be supported by the community. Very few of them do. And I'm wondering, you being a leader of one, like, what's your point of view regarding like what this next stage of evolution is going to have? Because I do feel like it's coming, and I'll tell you what one of my theories is that it's curation. Like, I think a big part of the value that these communities are going to be deriving down the line is going to be dependent on the curation from the team, right? Of whatever it is they're providing. Like you said, you use the Black Amex example, right? Which is, I think, very much kind of like what DGODS is trying to do. They say like they're going to be the Soho House Web3, right? Which is like, okay, that's fine, tall order, but clear value prop. Yuga would be, like VIP premier access for all apes in our metaverse gaming world, right? To be determined. And then you have something like Proof, which is like curation via art. We think you're going to be the movers and shakers in this space down the line, right? All of them future forward, future facing, not able to deliver immediately. But I think that's going to be one of the biggest outliers once proven, right? Like the people that are able to deliver a curated experience that is successful, that satisfies the appetites of the people that are really in the community for that, right? Like not just for flipping, but like, hey, I'm a gamer, I'm part of Yuga. I think that they're going to deliver, and that's why I'm holding my IP and I'm not lending it out or selling it. How do you see that playing out, or like, and where are you looking at, with your project and with our space, which is the Bitcoin L2 sector?
I think part of the problem right now that we have is almost like this identity crisis where I don't necessarily think projects have a lack of ideas. I think they have a lack of conviction on those ideas, and they're scared. And I think what they're scared to do is to say, actually, this is where we believe the space is going to go, and this is what we want our niche to be. This is what we want our value proposition to be. And I think you raise a good point there, which is, for example, you've got Proof, which is art curation. You've got Yuga Labs, which clearly looks like it's going to be like gaming. You've got Gutter Cat Gang, which is like we're going to be like this culture brand for basketball. And you've got DGODS saying like Soho House of Web3. Now, most other projects, other than very few examples, don't really know what value proposition they want to deliver, right? So what they're trying to do is just jump on the metas and jump on what everyone else is doing. And in doing that, they just have no conviction on anything they're doing. What they want to do, they're scared to say because they feel like they'll lose half their community. And I think projects, even some of those blue chips, need to now just be willing to shed some skin on that and be like, okay, this is our niche. This is where we're going to focus all of our efforts. And we know a whole bunch of you don't want this. And we know the floor price reflects like this general Web3 bet on us doing everything. And there'll be a lot of pain there for some of the projects. For example, Yuga Labs, right? If Yuga Labs is just gaming from now on, does their price fairly reflect that value proposition? Probably not. If Proof Pass is just art curation, then are they undervalued or overvalued? Well, it depends on the art they're curating. It's as simple as that. So I think the floors right now are all over the place because they're still priced at, we're just betting on Web3. And we'll see that shift to, okay, this is our niche of value proposition, which is art curation, or it's gaming, or it's merchandise, or access to real clubhouses. And we'll start to see some floors. The idea of flipping, it should be nonsense. It should be, okay, the value proposition I get out of owning a Proof Pass is that I get art worth, 5 ETH every 3 months. Therefore, the pass is worth X. And the value proposition of owning a Bored Ape is only 5 ETH. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Because I get like metaverse perks, right? Which the game isn't my vibe and it's not what people want. So we'll see these floors start to detach from where they previously settled, which is based on their cultural significance in Web3, I think, and move to what is their value utility being delivered, like their real value proposition. How much does the market value that utility? So we'll see this completely change, and we'll see the birth of new projects as well. So the way that we're thinking about it with the two projects that I'm part of is we've got that community project, and we're now working on how do we deliver real value to holders. Is it going to be bullish or bearish? We don't know. It depends on how the holders react to that value. It's as simple as that. And then on the Apollo side, it's like it's easy for us there because that's a product business, right? So we're building product, and it's easy for us to get access to product by ownership of a digital token. And I think those projects will do really well because their value prop is so crystal clear. It's you get access to this by owning this. And the fluffy like Beans, Azuki, DeGods, until they have their clear value prop, they have these big readjustments coming to them. How soon it happens, who knows?
Mark, make sure to drop us any links in the private chat here so we can pull up, your projects and talk about those a little bit before you have to dip out of here. We do have a special request from They Call Me Ken, who I guess, wasn't here earlier for the ETHscriptions. Are you able to just summarize your thesis? My take was that you didn't really see any purpose.
Eli 5.
Like you felt like ETHscriptions were just trying to find something to do and jump kind of on the hype.
FOMO hype. Like just buy if you want on-chain ETH assets, they already exist. They already have communities. They're established projects. You can book. It's funny. The managing director of Apollo. He just bought a Moonbird the other day, actually. Like he's been thinking, he was like, what NFT do I buy? And he picked up a Moonbird and he said, is this a good buy? And I talked him through the project, and I think his bull case was, all these guys have dropped so much, I don't see them falling much more. But like on a serious take, it was like he likes the vision and where they're going. And that's an on-chain project now, right? Like if that's on-chain, it's already got a community. There's far less risk buying a Moonbird than spending 1 ETH on some random ETHscription. And I think in this market, if I was trading and flipping and degen investing right now, I would be looking at preservation of capital as opposed to growth in this market. And the easiest way to preserve it is just sit on the ETH or the Bitcoin and just vibe along. Yeah, you'll miss opportunities for sure, right? But I tell you what, you'll also avoid a whole bunch of shit. And I think what you want to be doing is avoiding the nonsense as opposed to trying to get those very, very rare shining stars that we see right now. It's so hard. Like when was the last time any of you guys jumped on a mint that 2x? Like it's been so long since like those, like back in 2022, right? You could buy any degen animal mint and you'd wake up and you'd be like, holy shit, this floor's 5x. Now that just doesn't happen as easy. So yeah, just preservation far more important. ETHscriptions, I'd just sit them out, and if they take off, then jump on this. Then you'll start to see some innovation, and there'll still be some opportunity for upside there and cultural adoption. But right now, I'd be willing to just sit on ETH and Bitcoin.
I need to lock in on this specific like technological piece as well. That Biggie mentioned the purge, right? Like are these even immutable when it comes to like not being in your wallet here in a moment? Like, isn't there a situation that you were talking about, Biggie?
They use call data, right, Biggie? I think the ETHscriptions.
Yeah, that's why I think they were saying that come the purge, those things are going to be one of the first things to go.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, like ultimately, why? Like, just it's Ordinals somewhat. I like this as well. It's like there's a lot of risk involved with some of these things, and it's like I like it. I compare it to protocol risk, right? A lot of people ask me, why don't you use like a whole bunch of these DeFi protocols like BendDAO and earn free interest, they call it. Why don't you earn free interest on your ETH? Well, let me tell you, nothing is free in this space. And like protocol risk is real. And with ETHscriptions and Ordinals, there's inherent like early adoption protocol risk that these might be purged, there might be a bug in how these things are tracked. And I would factor that into everything you do as well. Like there's no free lunch, right? And on anything really new, the risk is, you've just got to assume it's 99 compared to anything else. And if you could tolerate that risk and you're happy to sit on it, then there's your garden to play with.
Man, I couldn't agree with you more, Mark. I'm keeping my ETH at the moment and trying not to ape or do or mint anything. And yeah, I am sitting on a couple of projects that I'm bullish on, but other than that, not doing anything. So you heard it here first, girls and gals. Now, having said that, I'm curious, Mark. First of all, you have 3 ETH, gun to your head. You have to use it on an NFT. Do you
All that
go
ETH that you said you're
Azuki or
sitting
do you
on,
buy
use it.
2 Moonbirds? Because my co-host here said he would buy a Azuki at 3 ETH, and I flamed him for it. I said, "You get 2 Moonbirds for us. Shit, you get a fucking doodle. Would you go for an Azuki?"
Okay, so if I so I've got 3 ETH, right?
Yeah.
Am I looking to get good shit to sit on, or am I looking for upside? If I'm looking like
No, good shit to sit on.
good shit. So,
Okay, that wasn't specified when I made my statement.
I mean, so the Jack Butcher stuff I think is solid, like really fun. Like what he's doing with the old Pepe N stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's just fun. I can imagine if you're bag holding that, you've done well, but also you're like, oh, this is cool shit. Like I might get like this edition based on like this art and stuff. Like that's a really fun hold. I would be happy to sit that. I think that's like 0.5, 0.6 thereabouts right now. And like also, this is controversial, but like I'm looking at Utes, right? And you know, there's excitement in that community. They've got that. We know things are coming. They've dropped quite a bit from their like highs. They were 2 ETH before this recent like correction. So I'm looking at Utes as like as a value play. They're on Polygon, so it's a bit risky as well, right? The community there still isn't thriving like on ETH. So I'm looking at like Utes. I mean, for art wise as well, looking there, I just saw Renga. Like Renga is like absolutely beautiful. It's funny. I've got the Dirty Works. I got on this early. It's sitting right next to me. I need to put it on the wall actually. I got this really nice Dirty Works print.
Oh wow,
which is
man.
cool, and it's got like some nice metal foil, and I'm yet to get it framed and put up. But like and that's a project that I would be happy to hold, right? Renga is just beautiful art. You know, it's also got a community, and they're doing things. They've got this really cool partnership with the Haas F1 team. So if you're a fan of F1 and you're a fan of art, then you look at Renga and you're like, oh cool, we've got this F1 hookup with a nice arty project. So and I think that's like 0.35 thereabouts, and it just shows you that there are value buys now in this market, which is great. Like a Moonbird at 1.3, someone picked one up on and was saying, is that a good buy? I was like, yeah, hell, that's a good buy, right? You know, when you look at how much these things were last year, I know that's it's not indicative of future performance, but relatively speaking, it's a value buy in comparison to where they were. And I'd feel safer buying into established projects than new ones in this market. They're not going to have the upside. Let's be clear on that. They're not going to have the same upside because if something's 10x in, it's much easier to do. And if you're from mint, but it's probably safer. They'll have their drawdowns, but the chance of them going to zero overnight is close to zero in itself, right? Unless something unless Kevin Rose comes out and he's kicked maybe a few more raccoons or something, and the market doesn't vibe with that. They're not going to go to zero overnight. Whereas like a new project genuinely just can disappear off the face of the earth overnight.
100%.
We were covering that Azuki piece live, and it's unfortunate to see what happened with that reveal and the way they went about it, because the beauty of NFTs is that if you do have a successful company, you allow the collectors to join in that journey with you. And that was really the beauty of Bored Ape Yacht Club, was that you had people that bought in at 0.08, right? 0.08, 0.12, whatever they bought it at. And it turned them into zealots. It turned them into community members for life, the fact that they got dropped this amount of money. And I love the point you made earlier about like, we're not going to get back to onboarding people until these prices get back to an affordable level. And then for whatever reason, the companies are able to,
deliver
value. Yeah, deliver value.
I always hate like going down this route because then it sounds like I'm talking about a security, right? Which is like the dirty little secret. But honestly, like that is what needs to happen to see this go well.
We have clear legal we've just reincorporated actually Megapont and Apollo as a UK company this week, right? So this is like really new. I'm UK resident. Our holding company at Apollo was a US company. Megapont was decentralized. It had like a European entity, and now we've incorporated in the UK because in our mind there's like this. There's now a real clear legal framework of building like pseudo securities is okay in many ways if you're well defining the ecosystem and the utility and the tool you're delivering, right? So for example, if you build a marketplace and you have a marketplace token and you need the token to access the marketplace, then it's not really a security. It's a utility token isolated to that environment. And the EU regulators in the UK are now saying we're not going to treat that like a security because it just isn't a security, right? It comes with no board seat. It comes with no ownership of the company. It's not paying the bills. So like the US like legacy Howey test that everyone sort of put NFTs to. I think Europe and the UK and a lot of other jurisdictions are now saying that's just nonsense. Like we're not going to treat these things like that. And we'll start to see the next wave of projects, which are like it's cool for us to deliver like real value to holders because it's basically like an evolution of Kickstarter in many ways, right? Like before NFTs, I was sitting there funding all kinds of DGen Kickstarter projects. All of the gaming ones failed to deliver and went to zero. But like I got some really cool trinkets and like pizza ovens and shit like that coming from time to time. So it's like value being delivered to me. And I think NFTs are going to go down that path, right? Because if there's a legal framework, then we'll certainly see people start to stretch that and see how far they can go with it.
Jacob, clip all of that. That was excellent.
So Mark, one of the things that we've discussed here not too long ago is the value proposition of an NFT being in-chain, on-chain, or does it even matter? Do you think down the line, normies or people that are newly onboarded into the space, do you think it's important for them to recognize that value? Or do you think it's something that we'll eventually get to, or will people just not give a crap?
It depends on the project. So why does it depend on the project? Art. So I'll go to art first. First and foremost, if you're buying digital art on the blockchain, it has to be on-chain or in-chain. It can't be centralized in my mind because you're buying that piece for, I guess, the value in perpetuity, right? You always want to appreciate that art piece. And, you know, as proven by history, artists die and art still has demand, right? So you bet that whatever centralized box is serving that art will disappear one day. And you don't want that art to go. So if I'm buying digital art on chain, I want it decentralized. It's as simple as that. Now, NFTs, I'm not so, I used to be decentralization maxi. Everything on chain, like this is great. However, now it's the value accrual from the NFT ownership is coming from a centralized entity. And if that entity disappears, the value of the NFT goes to zero anyway, right? So if a Bored Ape Yacht Club were to mint now, and you know it's very utility aligned Bored Ape Yacht Club, and it wasn't Bored Ape Yacht Club is frozen IPFS, so it's kind of not on chain, but it's as close to them saying we can never change this. And it was said, oh, we're a centralized API. I don't think I would care because I'd be like, okay, if these guys shut up shop, then the NFT is worthless anyway. So it depends on the project. If it's art, has to be on chain, 100% not up for debate. If it's utility based, access to product, I would be flexible. It's a bonus for sure. It's a hell of a bonus. Maybe it comes with a little premium, but not as much as art.
Interesting. That's a great take. I like that.
All right, we're going to wrap up the episode here in the next 15 to 20 minutes. A couple questions coming through that I want to get y'all's takes on. Mike Erlinson is saying any BTC NFTs you're looking at to hold. So I know we kind of touched on the ecosystem as a whole and kind of what that is looking like into the future. But any specific like ordinals that you're looking at or communities that you're looking at joining?
Ordinals right now, I would be waiting, and I'd be waiting because I think Recursion has just came out. We're seeing launchpads evolve to adopt Recursion. We're seeing more projects launch really nice art. And I think there's a lot more opportunity for upside because no project still jumps out to me as saying, okay, I can send this in my WhatsApp group to my mates and they'll be like, oh, I want one of these. Whereas Bored Ape was that. And that's something to point out. Like when I was sending apes and mutants to my friends, they were like, oh, this is cool. You tell them the price and they're like, oh, that's not cool anymore. But like their first instinct was like, this is cool, I vibe with this. There's not much of that on Ordinals right now. And I would be staying liquid to try and, figure out culturally that, what new projects are going to take that lead. Like, I would be looking at it and saying, what project is just going to be all over the timeline because people are putting it on memes and it's just everywhere. Like, back to the Bored Ape days, I remember there was that GIF that was everywhere. It was like, Wake Me Up, where the Bored Ape was slapping, the Bored Ape was slapping its owner in bed about waking up because the floor had jumped. And they were just everywhere. The GIFs, the memes were everywhere. It's not yet happened on Ordinals. So I would be liquid and just saying, hey, like, when that starts to happen, I'd be jumping on that.
Hey.
Yeah. There's one project in particular that I'm not at liberty to speak of that I'm excited about. I wish I could talk about it. Maybe I'll hit you offline about it to see what you think.
We're working with two. So we are working with two. One of them is like a pixel gaming thing. It's a bit of a more risky. So this is through Apollo. The art is again, it's like Marmite. You either like it or you don't. But it's interesting because it's gaming and you win real Bitcoin. But there's another that we're talking about, which is there's a blue chip project on ETH that we're working with to launch their Ordinal project, and the art isn't pixel art, and it's just amazing. And we're a small part of that big project. And that's why I may be bullish, right? Because I see projects like that coming over, doing something that I think is really cool and will take a lot of people's attention away from other stuff. And
I dropped you a question in the private chat about that, Mark. If you want to confirm yes or no.
It's this one.
Okay. All right. Cool.
So both giants, right? So yeah. And then so when you hear of projects like that coming over, it's like I'm happy to sit on Bitcoin and wait and see what like these big guys do, because I think that'll be more interesting than what we have currently.
All right, so we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to make this quick, but we do have another large story to get to that I want y'all's takes on. Before we do, if you like this content, please like the video. It does help us get the word out about NFT Live, about these individuals up here. I'll make sure to add, Mark, your Twitter profile here into the chat if y'all want to follow him and his takes on Bitcoin and kind of the larger space. But we do have the NFTGO Bag Check to get to, and then we have Threads. Can't leave today's episode without talking about Threads, guys, unfortunately. So we are going to touch on the market really quick with the NFTGO Bag Check. NFTGO is a sponsor on this month's episodes of NFT Live, so we appreciate them so much. But let's dive into it really quick. Market sentiment cooling off, still gifted. I need your tweets to be a little hotter here to raise this meter. Blue chip index is hurting against ETH and USD.
Falling off a cliff, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the 30-day mark as well against ETH, holding around 1900, 1950, but both against ETH and USD, blue chips are getting absolutely wrecked. This is primarily, again, NFTs on the Ethereum ecosystem. Market cap and volume don't look much better. You can see volumes are still holding. If you look at a yearly look, as we do here on the channel a bunch, you can see the volumes are pretty good. Like volumes have stayed pretty high. They're even higher than they were a year ago at this time, which I think marked the really start of the hurt. I think June was the other side, mint fiasco, and then we started to move into some really, really tough times.
It's interesting because it's probably, if I had to guess, I would bet it's a lot less wallets and it's just higher velocity.
Yeah, and you can look at this, right? Blur launching incentives and things in this time frame. So I forgot exactly when Blur launched, so I would agree with you. All right, holders, we'll skip that one. PFP market cap got absolutely nuked this past week. I think Statistics was tweeting about this, but yeah, you can do some look there. But yeah, market cap got hit. Volume over the last 24 hours: Bored Apes, Mutants, Punks, Captains, Azuki, Elementals over Azuki, Art Blocks, Heavy Metals, Bankler, and DeGods. And then
Mark, have you? So you said that you're watching the Azuki Elementals thing, reveal as we were. Have you been paying attention to Captains at all?
I'm so bearish on those two reveals.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, how horrible it must be for the holders of those collections, right? Basically, like Azuki, again. I think there'll probably be a court case. Like they didn't show one preview, and what they delivered was so different from the trailers.
Dude,
if I'm a big bag holder, I'm thinking, oh my days, like there's some legal recourse here.
Say it again, because that's the thing that I could not get past with these. Like, I could look past a lot of things and try and give benefit of the doubt here or there, just say like, oh, like, again, as a multiple time founder working on collectibles myself, I am the first one to be sympathetic when things don't go to plan or you have to pivot or something goes wrong, because it's hard. It's hard. But it seems very clear, and you just nailed it. They very strategically misled and FOMO'd people into a very expensive mint without showing the art on purpose, because they knew that what they were doing was recycling a bunch of junk and not creating anything actually substantially new or interesting. They knew that. They used that
single preview, not even of a one of one.
They knew
one. Yeah. So they must have known. And if they didn't, then they've clearly got the wrong team markup, right? They need to hire some new people to challenge them. A good counter example of this is what did the Jenkins project turn into? Is it as a Baruba? Oh, I can't pronounce the name. It had that shitty reveal that everyone memed, right, where they looked awful. But then
Kevin.
No.
Not Pixelmon.
No. God, I can't remember the name. It was Jenkins, the yacht club.
Jenkins Valet.
Yeah, the Island project, the new IP that they're starting. I can't remember what it's called, but they revealed it begins with an A. It's AZUR something.
Okay.
Anyway, they revealed 3 months ago. Market memed the shit out of it.
It's in
the chat there. Nick's linked it in the chat. Yeah, their reveal was terrible, right? Like, it got memed so hard. People were like, "Oh my god, you can't release this. This is garbage." And they've spent months reworking all of the art and working with the community to get it right. Like, when you compare the difference of how they've behaved from a shit reveal to how Azuki have behaved after that reveal, it's night and day, right? If I'm buying one of these two projects, why would I be buying Azuki other than Bag Bias at this point? That's what I would be saying, right? So they haven't reacted well. Memes, captains, I think they're reacting a little bit better, but heartbreaking again for holders paying $10,000 for something that doesn't look great.
More than that, I mean, shit. Or for captains was holding around 9 or 10 ETH, which is closer to $20,000, 15 to 20K for some people. If you're
I minted one of those as well, and I got out I think at like 5.5.
Nice.
So I missed some of that big upside that it went through, right? But the market at the time wasn't great, and I thought I'm happy to take my 1 ETH here. But I expected those guys to just put something out that the market would have loved, and Ethers as well. Like, what's going on there with that project? Like, how you fumble a project from that being in that position, it blows my mind.
Was saying this on the GM Web3 show yesterday, but there is an alternate universe where all 3 of those reveals went great, and
what does the market look like if they went great? Like, they'd be fighting for liquidity. Maybe everything else dumps, but I think, like, sentiment-wise, we would be in such a good spot, right? If people would be like, "Oh, what a vibe this place is now. We've got 3 new projects, like, that are going to lead everyone." The narrative would be these guys are going to lead the next bull.
So Nakamigos is on this trending list, doing extremely well. Like, over the course of like the last 6 months, Nakas have done pretty well.
Nakas are they're probably about to head back up close to an ETH again. They've done this. There's been
a take.
No, well, they've been through this cycle now like 2 or 3 times where they get down around 0.2 and then they go back up to like 0.8 or something. I've actually made money playing Nakamigos now. So they're starting to pump again, and I wouldn't be surprised if, we're sitting here a week from now or 2 weeks from now and they're back up around 0.6, 0.7 or something like that. There's a range. So I've been watching this. I don't have a lot of liquidity to buy more, but honestly, like, I've been thinking about buying more again because there's been people making money on these pumps.
It gives a crab god. He's playing that crab market like a king. All right. Last topic here that we need to get to. I appreciate, all the topics that we've touched on. We got Blur, we got Bitcoin Ordinals. If you've been, we touched on ETHscriptions, and most recently we were just taking a look at the market there and just having a discussion. Another one that came up there, Gift, though, was heavy metal. I don't think we have enough time to talk about it, but heavy metal is sitting at like 0.66.
Well, Mark, are you forging at all, or do you have any quick takes on?
I have not had time to even bother looking at it. So I want to see Heavy Metal do well because I think I've watched videos and seen some people playing it. It looks like a really polished game. I just think Web3 gaming is. So sorry, guys. I think Web3 gaming is overvalued. Is the best way to put it, and that's across it's across any project. I think it's just overvalued. I think people got a bit frothy. They thought there was more upside than there was.
What timeline are we talking about here? You frothy? We were talking about like 2 years ago, frothy.
I
like,
think even still now, right? Like, I just think it's so. I'm a big gamer, right? I always have been. That's how the whole Megapont team met gaming. So we were competitive gamers. You know, we toyed with buying a gaming team and all that stuff. So we're heavy into gaming, and I think there are a lot of people building games who don't understand gaming. Yuga Labs are an exception to that. So they're clearly building really good product. I think you can't doubt that. But I think they're going for mass market product, and you know, games are cheap, relatively speaking, right? Like a AAA game costs $55 these days, or whatever it is, thereabouts.
Or free.
And yeah, for free in most instances, yeah. And Web3 has to compete with those like budgets that are 9 and 10 figures, and try to build something that competes with them. I think the only team that I'm betting on doing that is probably Yuga Labs. I think they're the only team with a treasury and the right team makeup and hiring the right people and the right partnerships that looks like they can build a AAA game to compete with traditional gaming outfits. Now, there's that game, what's it, Up Only, that done really well the last few months on Twitch. And you know, we've seen like things like Stardew Valley and CS:GO to some extent. You don't necessarily need that like really big budget to do well in gaming, but they are exceptions, and those projects will certainly come through. But again, I'm bullish on what Yuga are doing. I just feel their pain because I think they've delivered so much value to their holders, and the price of the assets got to a like astronomical place, right? Like $500,000 for an ape. They almost were set up to fail in terms of like asset price because they were just so high. But they're shipping more polished product. They're shipping more product. They're doing all the right things. Like long term, I'm probably more bullish on them than absolutely anyone else by far. Like it's not, especially after seeing what like Azuki and Captains and me and Nanda did. Like it's clear that there are Yuga Labs and there is everyone
and
else.
everything
Like,
else.
Yeah. Whether or not that means that the price is going to go up, who knows? Because there's just a lot of assets and a lot of things moving. But they're just in a different league to anyone else right now.
We were hitting on that because it was a very sort of strange moment in the Azuki ascendancy. And it's largely, you know, earned because over the last year, they did execute very well in the bear market. And when everything else was tanking, they were holding or even thriving. And so everybody was looking at them, you know, at 15 ETH floor, like, are they the next Bored Apes? Everybody's like, they're the next ones. They're going to compete with Bored Apes. And we were actually even talking ourselves like, hey, it would actually be really cool to have real competition, you know, to have like an Eastern IP competing with the Western Bored Ape IP that could actually hold that conversation. And then after that reveal and then the launch of the Heavy Metals, you know, Elemental's reveal being trash and Heavy Metals actually, you know, showing again, you know, the quality of the product that they keep putting out. It was just like clear.
We all
again.
know what they're turning into, right?
There's just there's just no, it's not even close. There's no other project or team or company in Web3 that's even remotely close to what.
If I could buy Yuga Labs shares, I would probably sell everything else and just buy Yuga Labs shares. If I like, if Yuga Labs was a public company, and maybe they're going down that path, then
why wouldn't you buy the NFTs?
So I think the world as a whole understands equity and how that can, you know, relate to how well a company is doing in terms of if I'm making a sizable bet, right? So I'm talking here like a sizable bet where I'm allocating some real funds to it. I'm thinking, okay, like if I can own their equity, they are by far the best bet on Web3. Like long term, Web3, community, gaming, just everything. I think they get it. It was funny. I said to one of my friends, Crypto Jack. I sent him. I doctored a Gordon meme. Obviously, he's taken the sabbatical to take care of his health, and I changed one of his tweets to just say, "GM fuckers, I'm back." And I was like the space just needs that now more than ever. Yeah. Like just that Bored Ape moment, and I think they're the only team that could do that, right? Like they're the only team that could just change the whole sentiment of the space. With something, and that speaks volume to the company that they are. No one else can. When you went through that graph there of NFT volumes, I didn't even need to think about what project it was that launched when there was that spike. I already knew it would be something Yuga, and it probably was, right? It'll have been like heavy metal, or it'll have been the Suiki or something along those lines. Because every time something new comes out from those guys, the market stops, pauses, and all of the attention is there. Because it's the most fun, right? So it's the most fun. I mean, like Dookie Dash, for whatever you say about it, it was pretty fun. Again, people say, oh, it was a bit crap for a game. It's like, well, what has anyone else shipped? Like, in this space. Like, they've shipped Dookie Dash, they've shipped Heavy Metal, they had that mobile game before anyone else was even thinking about games. They had the Riddle, they had the web game. Like, these guys have just shipped and shipped and shipped. So super bullish long term on like a multi-year time horizon, I think. And right now you can't buy the equity, right, Gifted? Yeah. So to go on that, buy the assets. You can't buy the equity, next best thing is the assets.
You know, kind of breaking that thought out though, like the fragmentation that Whale.Swoosh was talking about, I think is real within Yuga. Like right now they have delivered a ton of assets to BAYC and they will, but there's no replication of the value I think that they've created already for BAYC, if that makes sense. Like mutants are already out. They can do other things, but the value accrual there is not going to be the same, and they're only going to increasingly put out more gaming assets. So go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. One of the interesting things that someone pointed out to me, and I didn't realize this so recently, is the Yuga Labs founders each received one ape. They each received one ape on the mint, right? So they all have their PFPs, and everyone knows their apes that they have, Gaga and Gordon and so on. And the founders have never minted or paid for anything else Yuga Labs, right? So everything Yuga Labs has done, they've been able to obtain simply by owning that one singular asset at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So even the paid ape coin drops, they got ape coin for free by owning that asset. And someone highlighted this to me, and I was like, it just makes so much sense that it's probably going to continue to be that moving forward, right? Because it's very clean for them as an organization. Like Gaga, he doesn't need to ever buy anything or spend any more money because they can always tie back to the two core membership assets will gain access to everything they do. And until we see that changing, I think mutants are probably extremely undervalued right now. Apes, I want to say they're undervalued, but it's still 50 grand for an ape, which is just a hell of a lot of money. Yeah. So it's hard to say that 50 grand asset in this current NFT bear is undervalued. But like mutants in comparison to other assets, until we see Yuga Labs say, okay, they no more get free shit for the cool stuff we do, then they're just undervalued. It's as simple as that. I would be, if I had 5E for like thereabouts, if you can get a mutant still for that, I don't think you can. Like I would be buying a mutant over a DeGod or over anything else, like long-term thinking about holding an asset.
Bounced a bit. It's above 6 ETH now.
So that's like less than a captain's, right? I think.
Yeah.
The I'm not sure who's buying a captain's over a mutant ape.
The other cool aspect of heavy metal has been ApeCoin usage, right? And that's obviously a part of the Yuga ecosystem, if you will. Like that was a really cool moment, the ability to seamlessly use a like a ERC20 token and input into a game that's mass played. Like that is you're not spending fiat and buying gold in World of Warcraft or RuneScape. You are literally spending ApeCoin and it going into a game that you're playing along with a lot of other people. So
and people forget who's building that game, right? So Improbable, it's a UK startup. They're building that game. Now their pockets are like giga deep, right? And like these guys aren't clowns. Like they build solutions for like the Ministry of Defense and like healthcare. That this is a real innovative technology company that's very secretive in everything that they do. They hire the smartest people in the world. I'm biased. I know a lot of people that work there. Some of the smartest people I would want to hire work at that organization, and they're building the other side, right? So like people say, oh, Yuga Labs can't build this massive metaverse of like with their 6 gaming staff. Well, they're not. They have a multi-billion-dollar company building this out for them. And there's some great follows as well. All you have to do is go look at what some of the founders of Improbable are putting out, and see that there's some real shit going down at that company, and they're building the other side. So again, people are bearish as hell on the other side, saying, "Oh, we haven't seen anything yet. We haven't seen anything." Mm-hmm. But like it's coming, and some of the smartest people in the world are actually working on it. And you can say that with a straight face without knowing it's bullshit. Like a bunch of NFT degens who met at YC aren't working on building that game, like a real business. that's raised hundreds of millions and is worth billions is building the game.
Yeah. Hey, guys, if you want to hear more about Web3 gaming, I'm actually on a panel here in about 10 minutes with Jessica Atrovsky on Nifty Kit. I'm there with VGF and Keegan from the Oniforce ecosystem. I think he's in 10KTF too. Yeah, he's in a bunch of different things. So that'll be a fun discussion. Again, that's in like 10 minutes, so I don't think we can even hit threads. But we're an hour 30 in. Keegan's
a great guy. Drop that link in the chat. Keegan's a great guy, and VGF is one of my favorite follows in the space. Very, very smart, and especially when it comes to Web3 gaming. So that's going to be a great combo. If you are still looking for some awesome information and conversation happening today. Look, Threads, let's just hit it real quick. Mark, are you on Threads? What do you think about the Twitter derivative? Sorry, you done?
Someone sent me it.
I've got to prep for this thing too, right. But go ahead.
Someone sent me it, and I was like, holy shit, my family and like my real life is on Instagram. I was like, I don't want DGen crypto colliding with that, right?
100.
Just that in itself, like I now need to create a new account, right? That sucks. But like I've been here before, right? Like app.net was a thing when Twitter. So app.net was a startup that existed. So when Twitter changed their API, right, they fucked up all these clients, and everyone was crazy. This is back in 2011, and everyone's like, "Oh, Twitter is going to die. Like they've ruined their whole ecosystem." So a startup called app.net started, and overnight it was like, boom! They've got all of the users, they've got all of the traction. Everyone was talking about it everywhere. There's a lot of people in the audience who'd be like, "What the fuck is app.net?" Well, there's a reason why, because it just died. It didn't have the adoption. Before I jump on like a platform, like a new social network to replace another one, there needs to be a really good reason. If you're telling me it's a completely new take, like let's take an example, TikTok or Instagram, that were fitting a niche that didn't exist, I'm probably going to play around there and adopt that. But if you're telling me I need to replace an existing one, there needs to be a really good reason other than people saying we don't like Elon Musk, right? And we don't like rate limiting tweets. So am I bearish? I'm not bearish. I'm not using it yet until there's a better reason than people just saying like, oh, it's really cool because Elon Musk is a bit of an idiot at times on Twitter.
I think there's an actual phenomenon there. Like in order for an incumbent to be unseated, like the next product needs to be like 3x better in quality or something like that. I don't know the exact phenomenon, but I agree with you. Like you're not. Like especially on a social media app, that's why you see so many people within Web3 or like founders say, I'm going to create the next social media and it's going to be decentralized. Like good fucking luck, dude, because social media is like the literal hardest platform to unseat because basically the moat is the users.
Yeah.
And like the marketing effects that you see or the networking effects are literally at play in every sense and form. So I'm extremely bearish on any like native like Web3 social media platform. This one probably has a little bit more legs because it comes from Zuck and they have the ties to Instagram and all these different things, but still not leaving Twitter.
Yeah, I agree.
100%.
Nobody quits Twitter.
You just can't leave.
It's too much fun. That app is free. At times, I'm just astounded that it is because some of the takes on there are just incredible. Like I get more. Twitter fixes so much of my niche, right? It's like I get comedy from it. I get like informational stuff. I get like alpha at times. I'm just like I don't know. Yes, some of the stuff that's going on isn't great, but at the end of the day, like the app is free, right? Some of the takes there are worthy of paying an infinite amount of money at times. And like you said, the users are the moat. Spaces is on Twitter. Elon Musk holds a space. Everyone goes to that. No one cares about Threads anymore. If Donald Trump starts tweeting during the presidential debates on Twitter, no one cares about Threads. Ultimately, like the big influencers and where the discussion happens is where people will go. So I'll keep an eye on Threads, and until there's a really good reason to go there, Twitter maxi for now.
Right on, man. Dude, what a treat, man. Mark, thank you for coming. Honestly, I know I speak with everybody here. Like, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Hopefully we can do it again, come down a couple of months and see how the space has evolved. But, to our crew listening over here or anybody that's listening later, give this man a follow. Check out his projects. He doesn't talk about them a lot, but they're super interesting, and you will hear about them down the line. Thanks for coming, honestly. Appreciate
Mark, what's your Twitter profile so I can drop it?
Yeah, it's I'll put it in the private chat. It's my name without the vowels. I actually copied this from Emma Watson back in the day when I had a bit of a crush on Emma Watson. I saw she was doing it, and I was like, that's kind of cool. I need to copy her.
What
So
happened to the crush?
I was about 10 years old, and I was like, I'm going to copy whatever she does.
Not into her anymore.
Well,
Doesn't do it for you anymore.
Yeah, I've got the 3 kids. So I'm one of those rare founders. I have 3 kids, so I've got 3 little ones. Yeah, so got a family at home, which is good in Web3. They often ask me like, what are you doing? What's going on? And you try to tell them in a way that makes some sense, which maybe speaks volumes about the space, right? When you can't describe to your 7-year-old what you're doing, it's like, oh shit, maybe we need to figure out what the fuck we actually all are doing here at times.
We're playing video games with money.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're playing a video game with money, basically.
Yeah,
there we go.
Daddy's at the casino. Yeah.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for
That's
NFT
awesome.
Live today. Mark, I appreciate you stopping by. Again, you guys that were here the entire time, thank you so much. Leave a like on the video if you liked the content. Biggie, Gifted, I'll let you guys take us out again. Mark, appreciate you stopping by. You're welcome anytime.
OVOT fam. We'll see you soon.
Hey, what else can we say? Big love to Mark. Appreciate you, dude. Yeah, looking forward to more combos. OVOT. Catch Nifty Q over on Twitter talking about Web3 gaming. That's it.